Hey, I'm Tom Roth. I'm going to show you the proper way to do a kettlebell deadlift. So a couple things about deadlifts. First of all, they are not nearly as morbid as they sound. Nobody dies doing deadlifts. So that's the first thing. Second thing is, it's a really functional lift, right? The ability to pick up heavy objects from the ground while doing it safely and not hurting your lower back is really important as you age. So we definitely want to be able to deadlift. The first thing to know about deadlifts is that it's a hip hinge. A hip hinge, simply defined, is maximal hip flexion with minimal knee flexion. So maximal hip flexion, minimal knee flexion. If you were to start to flex through your knees, then it becomes a squat. A lot of people conflate a squat with a deadlift. We're hinging. So minimal knee flexion. Your knees can relax, but we don't want them to actively flex. First drill that you would do while learning the deadlift is just to repeat that movement, right? Body weight, maximal hip flexion, minimal knee flexion. Reach your arms forward. You should feel this a lot in the back of your legs. Then you just come up to standing. That would be one. Let's do a couple more. Maximal hip flexion, minimal knee flexion, up to standing. That's two. One more. Three. So we're feeling this quite a bit in the back of our legs. That's really good. Your hamstrings should work really hard during the deadlift. Next thing we want to do is we want to make sure that we can maintain a neutral spine while we're deadlifting. Oftentimes you see people deadlift and they do so with a rounded back. That is how you end up hurting your spine during a deadlift. Nobody needs to hurt their back. So a way that we can ensure that we're maintaining a neutral spine while we're deadlifting is to find an object like this dowel rod here, maybe a broomstick, whatever it is. You can take this pole. You're going to find 3 points of connection between the pole and your back. You will connect it to your tailbone. That's going to represent your lumbar spine. You can put it in between your shoulder blades. That will represent your thoracic spine. Up against your head will represent your cervical spine. There's no need to contort your back in order to match the pole. Wherever the pole lands, that is your spinal neutrality. So I've got a natural curvature here in my lumbar spine. That's totally cool. Now, while maintaining all 3 points of connection, I'm going to find that same movement. Maximal hip flexion, minimal knee flexion. I'll come back up to standing. That's one. We'll do it a couple more times here. If I lose a point of connection, that means I've lost spinal neutrality. That means if I are under heavy load, my back would be in a very precarious position. So we definitely want to make sure that we can maintain spinal neutrality while we're deadlifting. The next thing we want to do is make sure that we're building tension at the top of our deadlift. So this is something that most people do not do when they come into the gym. They lift up the weight, and they stand up, and they put it back down, and they don't build any tension. Building tension is how we get stronger. So we need to figure out, what does tension feel like? So if you stand with your feet hips width distance apart, and you extend through your knees, you get really tall, give your quadriceps a little punch, you can feel your quadriceps get tense. Now if you make a fist and you bring it to your lower back, and you float all 4 fingers down to the ground, you can try and squeeze your index finger with your glutes. You can feel your glutes kind of dimple on the sides. That's tension through your glutes. So tension through your quads and your glutes. Next, you'll make crab claws. You'll bring them to your diaphragm. Take a deep breath in and push against your hands. Powerful exhale. Push back against your hands. Deep inhale. Controlled exhale. So now we're tense through our quads, through our glutes, through our core. This is where we want to finish every single deadlift. The guy who taught me how to deadlift would punch me at the top of every single deadlift. If I wasn't tense, it would hurt quite a bit. I will not punch anybody, I promise. But that's still a really good visual, right? Is to get to that punchable position. So your next drill would be to take the rod, once again, maintain your spinal neutrality, maximal hip flexion, minimal knee flexion, take a deep breath in. Then as you exhale, you want to come up to that tall type position a couple more times. Deep inhale, controlled exhale. One more time, inhale, exhale, back up to standing. That breathing, it's really specific. What the breathing does is it helps to build abdominal pressure. All right, by building abdominal pressure, I engage through my core, and that's how I end up protecting my lower back. So when we see people wear the lifting belts, this is the thinking behind the lifting belt, is to breathe against the belt, to push your core against it. That's why you wear the belt. It doesn't just magically straighten your lower back. It's actually to build abdominal pressure, which then in turn protects your lower back, right? So this breathing is really a skill. That deep inhale, controlled exhale, breathing out. Sometimes with a client, I'll put the belt on. It just kind of depends on how well they grasp it. But taking those deep inhales, controlled exhales, breathing past your chest, that's a real skill. Once you have that skill, then you can start to pick up some weights. All right, so what we want to do now is take our kettlebell. We are going to stand over the kettlebell so the handle is in line with your heels. From here, you'll take a deep breath in. Find that maximal hip flexion, minimal knee flexion. Your hands will arrive at the belt. So we do not want to just simply bend over to get our hands down to the belt. We'll lose spinal neutrality. Instead, your hips go back. Your hands arrive at the belt. Once your hands arrive at the belt, we want to build tension through our lats, through our upper back. We don't want to round through our upper back while we're lifting. We often see this while people are lifting with the bar. They're lifting really heavy down here. As they start to pick up the bar, they start to round up there. That's how you can really damage the discs in your thoracic spine. So if we build tension through our lats, our upper back muscles, we'll be able to help protect your thoracic spine. The way we do that is we think about breaking the handle of the kettlebell in half, like it was a branch. But that break is not coming from our wrist, rather it's coming from up here, our upper back. We break the handle of the kettlebell in half. So now, my upper back is tense. I'm going to take that deep breath in case if I lost it. Forceful exhale, up to standing. I'm going to keep breaking the handle of the kettlebell in half this whole time. Deep inhale, maximal hip flexion, minimal knee flexion. Exhale, up to standing. Inhale, exhale. Notice how the kettlebell stayed between my heels the whole time. If the kettlebell moves forward in your stance, that can mean a couple of things. It could mean that you're losing the tension in your lats, and then the bell migrates forward on the descent. It could also mean that you're not really flexing to your hips on the descent, but rather you're just lowering with your chest. If you're lowering with your chest, that's how you're going to feel it in your lower back. We do not want to feel this in our lower back. You should feel it in your hamstrings, your glutes, your core, even your quadriceps, right? Because you are coming up to knee extension, upper back as well. Pretty much a full body, but we do not want your lower back to take over. You can do a few more sets here, standing over the bell. Inhale, break the handle of the kettlebell in half, forceful exhale, back up to standing. Inhale, exhale. Doesn't matter what the modality is, the same principles will apply. Build tension through your core, break the handle of the kettlebell in half, or break the bar in half. If you're using the trap bar, just engage through your lats, get your lats tense, come up to a tall, tense position. Doesn't matter what tool we use, the principles will still be the same. That should get you on the path to doing a proper deadlift.